Hello, class, and welcome to INT 315, Intelligence Analysis Collection and Technology. I am Professor Oakes, OCHS. It's spelled different than the way it's pronounced here in the United States. But you may call me Professor O, and that is pretty much how I'll sign my stuff when I'm communicating with you in the written format. I want to welcome you to the course, and I think we'll have a really good time. And in this first mini lecture, which I'll be doing each week, a small lecture, we're going to cover some expectations related to the course, the key points of the syllabus, and then I'll talk a little bit about your work that's due in this very first week. And I'll do that each consecutive week as we move through the course. It's important for you to note when you take an accelerated course like this that it's essentially a 16-week course that's been compressed into an 8-week course for the same equivalent semester hours of 3 semester hours. As a result, the workload is intensified because we're trying to do twice as much work in half the time. Basically, if you look at it from, I'm not a math person, but work with me there and you'll understand what it is that I'm saying. As a result, you'll find that this course is kind of reading heavy, so it's really, really important when we start that you immediately get into those books and read what you're supposed to read and then kind of stay up on it and kind of get into a battle rhythm of how you approach the class. In other words, all work is due Sunday night at midnight, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right, you're doing your reading, and by Thursday you're sort of drafting what your responses will be to the prompts. You get those in there by the weekend, you respond to another student, and then you wash, repeat, wash, rinse, etc. Okay? That didn't work out. It was better in my mind, but thanks for coming along with me on that. So when we look at the course, I just want you to be aware of that it's incumbent upon you to keep up with the pace of the course. And the danger sometimes is that people think, I'm going to get 3 semester hours in 8 weeks, and they underestimate the workload that's associated with it. So I'm not trying to scare you, but I do want to caution you and make sure that you understand the tempo of the course so that you keep up with the course, okay? Each week, you're going to have a discussion that's due, and you will find that in the Blackboard. You'll find it in 2 places. You'll find in Blackboard on the left-hand side a list of modules, Module 1 through 7, for each week that we're in class together. And in those modules, you'll find the additional reading to our 2 books that we use, in other words, online-type resources that I might use. You'll find assignments that are due if you have a paper that's due that week. You'll find a prompt for your country briefing that week. And then, of course, in the final week, you'll find the briefing, the prompt for the final paper and also the exam, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But each week you have discussions that are due, and there's a separate folder that says discussion board. This week I expect you to post your introduction in there, and then each consecutive week 1 through 7, when you go into discussion board, you'll see prompts from me for questions, and I expect you to respond to those questions and then also interact with another student, not necessarily in a overtly provocative way, but in a challenging way, basically. If somebody has a different opinion of you, et cetera, so that we sort of pursue a dialectical process in wherein we can discuss multiple facets to the same topic. That's exactly what I'm after, and that is really our class participation. As time permits during the course, I may set up collaborate sessions so that we can kind of interact a little bit, and that's generally decided on upon the tempo of the class and sort of class participation, who's in regularly, etc. So that's kind of out here in the gray area. We may do that, okay? We may do that once I have a sense of you guys as a class. So don't neglect that discussion, okay? No, don't neglect that discussion. The other thing that is expected is that in week 1, when you open up the module, you will see that I have assigned you a country of study. The challenge to teaching this course in an open source format in an unclassified environment for a university, the challenge with teaching that is obviously we don't have any classified resources at our disposal. So it's difficult to walk you through the processes of collection analysis, and technology is kind of over here. It's a different thing. So what I have done in the hopes of sort of at least showing you how that works is I have assigned you a country, and during the course of the semester you will use open source intelligence, which is OSINT, which generally in the intelligence community we use that more as a supporting source to a primary or multi-source document, which I'll talk about in a minute. But because it's open source and it's available to you, I've assigned you a country, and using open sources, meaning whatever you can find in books, the internet, websites, etc., you're going to prepare a briefing for me in weeks 3 and weeks 5 that basically covers what you found. And so I've given you some requirements for that. They are in that assignment when you go and look at it. So those are your intelligence requirements. And I expect you to collect that information related to those countries that I've assigned you, and then you present me a briefing basically, which includes an analyst comment. So I want you to gather that information, format it you could choose your method of delivery. You can do a video for me. You could do a video with audio. You could do slides with audio. You can do purely audio as long as it's coherent and well scripted, etc. So you get to choose that format, but I want you to address each of those intelligence requirements that I've assigned related to your country, and then include an analyst comment where you give me some type of analytical conclusion on how the things that you've gathered either impact the country or impact the country in terms of its relationship with the United States. So this is kind of an OSINT exercise, but it's meant to sort of model the process we would use if you were, say, for example, a SIGINT analyst or a GeoInt analyst, where you're collecting information from assets that have those capabilities, you're putting it all together, you're creating an analytic product, in this case a briefing, and then you're pitching that to the person that's leveraged the requirements. So that's the intent of that, okay? If you go into week one and you look at the countries and you feel like the little lost sheep and you've been left out, first, I would ask if you are late to this class, that may be you. So if you go in there and you don't have a country, please contact me within 48 hours of the classroom opening so that I can assign you a country. This assignment is purposely not due the very first week so that you have time to sort of build that foundation on which and learn a little bit about what we mean by collection and analysis as we go forward, but to build a little bit. But obviously, if you wait until the end of week 2 and go, oh, Professor, I don't have a country, now you've put yourself behind the 8 ball because that amount of time has gone by. So your deliverable back to me is if you see that you don't have a country, contact me immediately and let me know, okay? So that is the discussions and the briefs, and those are regular works in terms of that. You're going to have 2 papers in this class. One is smaller than the other. So the first one is a more gentle approach to it, and you can see the requirements for that in the syllabus as well as the prompt. And it is related to analysis and how we use analysis against a country. I shouldn't say against a country, against information being collected on a country. So, or whatever the target happens to be. Because the reality in an intelligence perspective is you could be an analyst of economics, you could be an analyst for a country's military, you could be doing human trafficking, you could be doing law enforcement, you could be working with the FBI, you could be doing arms smuggling, you could be doing money laundering, pick something. You would be doing high-level politics. You could be doing business. You could be working for Redbox and doing intelligence for Redbox regarding sales and metrics and who's renting what, etc. You could be working for Amazon. And I don't mean that in a spooky, creepy way, but understand when we look at collection analysis and technology, the thrust of this class will be more towards law enforcement and federal type work, but understand the basic tenets of that apply across many, many, many registers that are out there. Just because you want to be an intelligence analyst doesn't mean specifically that you're going to go work for the federal government. I work in my day job for a major defense contractor, and there's a specific unit in that defense contracting company that is responsible for business intelligence, and they go out and they gather information related to competitors. So that model exists across the board. So let's just get that out in the open too. So you have 2 papers. Then you have a very, very small assignment near the end of the class, a media project, which will involve sort of assessing some information that you can kind of get out there on Twitter or Facebook. And in that case, we're going to flip the mirror around and you're actually going to assess the national level agencies and how they use social media to promote their agenda or their abilities or to recruit or to staff, et cetera. And so we have that small one there. And then in the final week, you will have a final paper that is due. And I suggest you actually start that in week 6 so that it's done by the end of week 7. And in the very last 2 days of class, an exam's going to open up. You'll go in and you'll see exam and you're not going to see anything there. It's because I have it turned off because I'm like the wizard behind the curtain right now. And it's going to turn on for 48 hours, and that is a final check on learning, and that is your final exam. So you will have 48 hours to complete that exam, and I purposely set it up on the final weekend. And that's for, a lot of us work. I work too, so I understand that. So I'm very conscientious of what can be done during the course of a week regarding people's schedules and how valuable that amount of time is on the weekends. I myself was a distance learner for a lot of my curriculum being in the military, so I understand how valuable your time off is in sort of accomplishing the goals related to your education. So that's why I've kind of set that up. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, I'm not a perfect person. I scrub things for artifacts in terms of the syllabus and the courses, et cetera. This course was reworked extensively last year. If you catch something that's got like a weird date on it and you're like, why is that date different? Or why are you seeing incongruity? One thing, and Blackboard is multifaceted, so if you see something in the module and it doesn't match the discussion and you're like, okay, what is this? It's confusing you. Or even if you understand what it is and you go, okay, that's a mistake, please let me know so I can fix it, so I can sweep that up and we keep our house clean, basically, as we're working, okay? For me as a person, I'm pretty good-natured. You will see me in discussion, and I like to teach Socratically, and so I'm watching everything that you're doing, and then I will guide the discussions in certain ways, and generally my methodology for doing that is by questioning. So if you're over here and you say this, and this person's this, and you guys are kind of having this thing, then I'm going to come in and bring another viewpoint in. That's kind of how I try to do it. Or I'll push you down your path of reasoning to another conclusion, okay? The course is the course, and so the goal of the course is the material, is to discuss intelligence, collection, analysis, and technology, and how technology informs collection and analysis. But for our university, we also obviously want to put very strong, alumni out on the street, and as a result of that, I'm going to push you hard regarding the standards of mechanics and writing, and I'm also here to coach and mentor you. And so the standards for our program within our university are to use APA, and they have loads of links in our classroom about it. I've given you some examples of what it should look like, the way your citations should look, the way your references should look. I've given you examples of solid student work in discussion and in paper, so I really please go look at those so that you understand you have a model there to look at. I do use the Purdue Online Writing Lab, Purdue OWL, so if you Google that, you'll find it. That's what I use if you guys throw me a curveball, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? I don't even know what that is, and then I have to go look and check. So that's the tone by which I check the work, okay? In terms of discussion, for the first couple of weeks, I'm going to do a line-by-line of Purdue OWL in particular and mechanics of writing. And starting in week 3, if you're repeating the same exact mistakes over and over again, I'm just going to say go back and look at the previous markup that I've given you. Okay? Your papers, I'm always going to grade to that level of detail, but too often I spend 7 weeks correcting the exact same error with APA, and this is a very large class, and so I'm going to do it the first couple of weeks, and then I expect you to use that graded work along with the examples I provided to tailor your work. I will continue to grade the work and provide you feedback, but I'm not going to be so in the weeds as I will be the first couple of weeks to show you how to do it, okay? Regarding grading, because this is kind of confusing to people too, in the first couple of weeks of discussion, when I say I'm going to do a line by, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract your work out of Blackboard and I'm going to put it in a Word document and I'm going to grade it. I'm going to go up on the review button in Word and I'm going to turn on track changes and I'm actually going to do inline grading and inline comments to your work. Okay, so when I send that back to you via email, you need to open up that Word document, go up to review and show changes, show all corrections so that you can actually see the markup that I've provided you. That kind of confuses people sometimes. For your papers, it'll be the exact same way. I'll be bringing it down, I'll be grading it in Word, and I'll be sending it back, and I expect you to use that Microsoft Office capability to be able to see the markup that I'm providing with you so that you can grow and evolve your work from whatever level you're at up to the next level. If your work is perfect, then I'm obviously not going to give you a return copy. It doesn't happen often, and that's not because I'm an ogre. It just doesn't happen often, okay? If you've only had 1 or 2 mistakes, then I may not return the paper, and I may just address it in the feedback and just say, hey, you misspelled Lowenthal's name, and so here's your 99 on this paper, etc. Okay, so that's kind of the MO and how we're going to operate. Once we get past the first couple weeks in discussion, then I will probably just provide feedback in the window in Blackboard to just say, hey, go back and look because you're making the exact same mistakes that I've already graded twice on your work, okay? So paper's always Word, discussion at the beginning we get Word, and that's sort of the expectation for how you can see my grading, okay? I generally try to turn the discussions within 48 hours of their due date, and the papers may take me longer. Again, a very large class, and like many of you, I have a job and sometimes I have to travel, so sometimes it may take me 4, 5, 6 days to get all of the papers graded and back to you, okay? But discussions I try to turn quickly so that you can see what it is I'm talking about and you don't repeat the same mistakes. In other words, I get it back to you before you're on to the next work so that you can fix things before you submit the next assignment, okay? So that's our expectation. That's how we're going to work, right? We're all together. And then there was something else I was going to say about that. What was it? The due dates in Blackboard. When I work in the Blackboard software, I can make things due at 11:59, or I can make them due at 12 a.m. So everything is 11:59, so we say midnight. But always be aware that everything is due by midnight on Sunday night. So if you see a Monday, if you see something in there that says a Monday on it, it's only because the clock inside Blackboard stopped at 11:30 and wouldn't allow me to bring it over to midnight. So everything is due at midnight Sunday night in this course, okay? And that's Arizona time, okay? So that's our housekeeping. If you have any questions about that, feel free to send me an email and ask away. I'm not going to put my phone number in this video because I'm using YouTube to upload it over to our classroom. But if you go into our syllabus, etc., you will see my phone number is also there. And that's for emergencies, basically. I do check my email every day while we're in session. When we're out of session, then I take a little break too. But when we're in session, I'm checking it every single day. And if I can't check it because of travel, etc., then I will let you know, hey, I'm going to be traveling tomorrow, so I won't be back in until X day. The phone number. So Sunday, you've had a rough week. You're working and you're sitting down. You're trying to do your discussion, or you're like, crap. I wrote my paper, but now I need to edit it, and I'm not sure what she meant by X, Y, or Z. And it's noon, and maybe I've already checked my email. Don't gamble that I'm checking my email at the night or morning. If you have a question related to an assignment, and it is that day, right? It's Sunday. It's the day that it's due. Don't like, oh, Professor Oakes, I need to blah 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 blah, because I may have already checked my email Sunday morning at 8 as an example, okay? So if you have a question related to an assignment that's going to inform how you're going to execute that assignment, please feel free to text me and just say, hey, I'm confused about what you meant by X, Y, or Z. Please tell me who you are, because obviously I don't have your phone numbers loaded up in my phone. And sometimes I'll be like, who the heck is that? No. And I'm sure you guys do that too, right? So you're like, hey, this is so-and-so in your INT 315 class. Here's my question. That way, because my professional work on the other side, I have to be on call pretty much apart from sleeping, because the workforce that I manage are shift workers, and so my phone is with me constantly, and it's maybe turned off and turned to vibrate because I'm in a meeting, etc. But it's right there in front of me all the time. So if you need to get a hold of me and ask a question, please do not hesitate to text me. Text is better because I might be in a meeting, and if you want to call, you can call too. Same thing. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you. But you're probably going to get a quicker response from the texting. Okay. So that is all of the housekeeping, and if you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me and ask me whatever it is that you're going to ask me. Okay. So this week in week 1, we start out. My prompts for this week are a little lighter, right? So later on, they'll require a little bit more thought. I think they're a little bit more critical, require a little bit more critical thinking skills later on. Some of the prompts are very subjective. Some of them ask your opinion, and the reason that they're asking your opinion is because there is no necessarily wrong answer in regards of that, in regards to what it is that I'm asking. I'm asking your opinion because I want you to be able to think critically and select what you think the best option might be, and then be able to defend your choice through your research, right? And key points, etc. So when you get to the sort of subjective things and you're like, wow, this is kind of a matter of opinion, it's on purpose, okay? I'm asking you your opinion because I want you to, and then I know somebody else will have a different opinion, and I'm trying to create in you your ability to marshal strong arguments in defense of whatever hypothesis it is that you've developed. If you do in fact go into intelligence as somebody who's worked in analysis for my whole life pretty much, it doesn't turn into like a dogfight in terms of it, but when you're sitting down and you're competing hypotheses, you want to be able to have researched and present the most solid facts that support your position in that regard, right? And then it also, your ability to work with other students dialectically and fuse information together also is a component of how we work in this trade on out into the world, because we don't walk around beating each other over the head, with our information. Some do, but it's really not cool when they do that, right? We're looking for teamwork and an approach to something to come up with the most viable possibility and second and third possibilities, etc., to present a consumer for that information, right? And ultimately, the choice of what they do with that information is theirs. It's not ours. It's theirs. So that's an important component too. So this week you're going to start out with just some basic. You're going to do 1, 2, and 4. The reason that we're skipping a chapter there because I want to address the stuff in that one chapter later. So Lowenthal 1, 2, and 4, and then you're doing Treverton chapter 1 in the introduction. Okay. There's a couple of add-ons, and again, there's some add-on things that I want you to read, and you will find those in Module 1 in Blackboard. And then in discussion, you can read the prompts. But I want you to think specifically in the course of your reading about these things relative to week 1 as we talk about collection. Many years ago in the Army, when I was in the Army, there was an initiative that was started, which was basically kind of a human initiative, human intelligence, initiative, which was called Every Soldier a Sensor. Because like any other organization on Earth, the Department of Defense loves a good buzzword and a really good acronym, because we just thrive on that. Look at this cool acronym we just invented. So Every Soldier a Sensor became ES2, which just sounds It sounds really interesting, doesn't it? Well, we have this new ES2 initiative over here, and I'm not mocking that. I'm doing that lightheartedly. But the concept, though, basically of every soldier a sensor is kind of what we're looking at this week when I ask you to start to determine in your mind what the difference is between information and refined intelligence. So every soldier a sensor. Every human being, to a certain extent, is a sensor, and we move through our lives collecting information about things that surround us. You get up in the morning and you're going to work, or you get up in the morning and you're going to school, whatever your agenda is, right? And you have your routine in your house, etc. And the house is the house. That's a place that's known. But once you leave your house, as you move through your day, you're consistently collecting information. And you might be collecting information in your house too, for that matter, right? And so, but as you're moving through your day, and so let's say I'm driving in a large metropolitan area, and there's the traffic pattern has changed because there's construction going on, etc. So I'm gathering that information, right? And that information, then I'm going to start to process it essentially within my own mind, and that processing that I'm doing in my mind is a form of analysis. And my form of analysis and my commute int would be, I'm going to take X, Y, or Z road today because I know that there's an obstruction up here, etc. And so then I make a decision based on my collection, my perception. I've analyzed that data and I come up with a course of action. So that's a very rudimentary example, but obviously our perceptions are a form of collection, right? They're a form of information. So information is raw, and as we move through the process, pay attention to how information becomes refined and becomes intelligence. That's very important. The second thing that I want you to take a look at this week as you're going through your studies is when we look at perceptions, and whether that's information that's collected through our eyes and our ears, or our skin, or our mouth when we're eating. I love to eat and I love to cook, I'm just saying. So you're like, that's yummy, or oh my God, that's horrible, whatever. We're forming these perceptions, and which is a form of collection again, right? These are different sensors, right? And interestingly enough, the larger intelligence disciplines sort of follow some of those senses too. So if you stop and think about it, SIGINT, as an example, and the National Security Agency focuses on this type of intelligence, right? And GEOINT and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which is imagery-based, focuses on this one, right? Human intelligence, which would be the purvey of the CIA, DIA, FBI, etc., focuses on all of them, right? So it's kind of funny how that plays in, but the technology, intelligence collection technologies that we've devised follow basically our senses to enhance those with the technological capability to be able to listen to something from far, far away, or see something from high above, etc. So it's kind of an interesting, nerdy thing if you think about it as we move forward, and getting nerdier every day as we look at how technology is advancing, which we'll do at the back part of the class. So full circle back to collection. When we have perceptions, and whether that's a perception of information that has been provided to us by a technological collection platform, so PRISM as an example, we'll talk about that here and there, but the NSA program PRISM, SIGINT in that capacity, or a picture. I probably need to stop tapping my laptop. I just had a squirrel moment because I realize every time I touch it, it's rocking. I beg your pardon. So if we look at SIGINT as signals intelligence, which is communications information that's being provided by a technological collection platform, or we look at a picture that's being provided by, say, Global Hawk, or some other large unmanned system, or a satellite, etc., and we look at those products, we have a perception as we begin that analytical process, right? As we receive that information, we begin that analytical process that can be informed by biases. So the second thing we're going to look at this week is bias. And bias, as we are all very much aware in our daily lives, it can apply to anything, right? So we have perceptual biases and we have cognitive biases. And so during the course of our reading this week, I want you to pay attention to those, to the authors when they mention those different things, and how those biases can impact. The collection is the collection. It's just information, right? My eyes see something. My eyes are just seeing something. So that's the black and white of it, or in this case, color, right? Or colorblind, it doesn't matter. But my eyes are just seeing it. It's just raw. I'm seeing it. It's the same thing with data that's coming from a technological collection platform. It's just data. It simply is just data. It's unencumbered with anything. It is just data. It is when we take that information and we begin the process of converting it through analysis into something that's going to be a product, that's going to a decision maker, that bias can be a very, very dangerous thing. And those biases can be cultural, and by cultural, for me, I mean a SIGINTer against an imagery guy, against a HUMINTer, against an OSINTer, or an FBI guy against a CIA guy, against a local law enforcement guy, or FBI against local law enforcement or state, etc. So these cultures that I'm talking about are professional cultures that are very much sit in where each group of people sits. There's a level of pride of ownership of what it is they do, but there's cultural biases that will also play into that. And who's going to own it, who's going to take action on it, who's going to be the first guy to report it to the decision maker, who's going to get the credit for it, who's going to get the money for their budget because they got credit for accomplishing all of these, which is politics in there. But all of these things can impact biases and how we start to look at information, right? Perceptual biases too can be innocuous, or cognitive biases, like in the case of 9/11, where there was, I'm going to speak from a SIGINT perspective, where allegedly there was SIGINT information that might have indicated that there was something going on. It's very easy in 2020 hindsight to place those things into context, but we have to look at how cognitive biases inform what we're receiving in the now, and how it's very easy sometimes just to go, this is nothing, this is crap. Pardon my language, and you throw that over to the side, and then something happens over here, and you're like, oh, click, 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 oh no. Right? This is one of the reasons that you will see intelligence people, no matter the level, whether it's local law enforcement, state, federal intelligence agencies, etc. They make the media when they make mistakes. But I would tell you straight up, for every mistake, there's many, many successes which are never publicized, and that has to do, obviously, with classification and a need to know. So it's not advertised when they're successful. It is advertised when something really bad happens. And that's okay, because that's how we end up with reform, et cetera, and that's a subject for another class. But those things inform how we change our processes and try to do things at a higher level of ethics, and hopefully a higher level of security for the people, whether that means you're law enforcement or whether you're at the federal level informing larger national security type things, okay? So this week, as you move through your reading, those are the things that I want you to look at. I want you to look at the differences between information and intelligence and how that process causes that to happen from collection into analysis. And the second thing is take a look at those biases, because they're very, very important. And then we're going to kind of explore, we're going to start to build on these things as we move forward. And we are going to look at collection first, and then we're going to look at analysis and kind of put those things together. And then near the end of the course, we'll start to look at technology, which exponentially is reshaping, just like it's reshaping our personal lives, right? I'm a digital immigrant right here, digital immigrant. I remember when there were no cell phones, and I remember the first time I worked on a computer, and it wasn't in high school, okay? So that technology in my lifetime has gone leaps and bounds, and now the technology within technology, when we start to look at apps and things like that, and other capabilities that we have, and how we communicate with each other, driverless cars, when we look at autonomy in terms of vehicles, airplanes, cars, trains, etc., how those inform threats to our nation or threats to our community, threats to our state, etc. All of that is shifting faster almost than the community can keep up with it, right? And we'll talk about that later on too. But that's where technology comes in, and that's how we'll end this course so that you can kind of put it all together. So whether you're taking this course because you aspire to work in the intelligence community or law enforcement community, that's awesome. I really hope that you enjoy the class and that you take something away from it that will inform basically your career in that. Or whether you're taking this as an elective because it just sounded interesting to you, I hope that you walk away from the class then with a stronger civics perspective and understanding how this process is supposed to work, how it's supposed to work, and what it is supposed to do for the key stakeholders within the larger national security enterprise, from the federal government all the way down to local Department of Homeland Security, etc. Okay? And so with that concludes our very first mini lecture. And this one was pretty long. They won't generally be this long, okay? So I'm going to tell you that straight up. That's because this was the introduction to layer the course down. The rest of them will probably be about 5 to 10 minutes long, okay? So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a lovely week, and let's go learn something. I'm very excited. I hope you are too. Take care. Bye.